Viewers, we're beginning with some breaking news tonight. We're just going to show you pictures of a very important meeting between Prime Minister Modi and, of course, the US Vice President J.D. Vance, who happened to be at 7LKN with his entire family. And those are very touching pictures of Usha Vance meeting with the Prime Minister and their 3 children also being cuddled by the Prime Minister. We'll split the screen, we'll show you those pictures, but this really is the delegation level talks that took place between the Prime Minister and J.D. Vance. Remember, viewers, the Prime Minister met J.D. Vance last year also, and of course earlier this year in February in Paris. And that really set the tone for what many believe is a less strident US stand. Less strident stand taken by the Trump administration with regards to India and the rollout of tariffs. So what can this meeting mean? Will this allow for, again, a narrowing of the gap as far as those differences which persist in perception between India playing fair on the trade cricketing field and America trying to bring it closer to where it is on the pitch? So, Aman Sharma, who is going to be sort of talking us through some of these pictures. On the right, viewers, that bird bath there and the children with the Prime Minister, lovely touching pictures, tells you really about where this relationship figuratively also stands. Remember, there's a lot of atmospherics that goes into this. Usha Vance, being an Indian, an NRI, PIO, call her what you want, there is that undercurrent of cultural, very important synergy between India and the United States. You had it with the Biden administration, also with Kamala Harris, but here, given the role that J.D. Vance plays, the amplified role in the Trump scheme of things, this is very, very significant. So this works really to ministrate this relationship, to give it body. And I just want to go straight across to Aman Sharma. Aman, what's really taken place today?
Well, Rahul, the US Vice President, Mr. Vance, along with his entire family, was at 7LKM. And what I can tell you from government sources that it has been a very good meeting, a very good bilateral meeting between both the leaders, where they have spoken at length about Prime Minister Narendra Modi's earlier visit to the US. The headline for me is that both Mr. Modi and Mr. Vance have welcomed the progress in the India-US bilateral trade agreement and efforts toward enhancing cooperation in many areas. Both the leaders, in fact, have welcomed the significant progress in the negotiations for a mutually beneficial India-US bilateral trade agreement, which sources say is focused on the welfare of the people.
So very significant, Aman. What you're saying is that we're narrowing that gap. Remember, there's also a trade partnership that we're hoping, a bilateral one. So we're narrowing the gap. Is that what you're saying? This is very crucial information.
Absolutely, Rahul. The sources are clearly saying that there has been significant progress in the negotiations for a mutually beneficial India-US bilateral trade agreement. And, this shows that both sides have been working on it. There was a US team which had come to India, and the next few days an Indian team is also traveling to the US. India is trying to make the most of this 90-day pause period between both the countries. There's also talk, Rahul, maybe of an interim trade deal before the final trade deal is signed between both the countries by fall, which was the agreement, earlier made when Mr. Modi had visited Washington. But what we can clearly report, sources saying that both the leaders have welcomed the significant progress in the negotiations for a mutually beneficial India-US bilateral trade agreement.
So very, very significant. Viewers, what Aman is telling us is very significant, and it will move the markets tomorrow. It will bring a lot of relief across board if there is going to be some sort of an interim trade arrangement that would have significant impact on sentiment, business sentiment, trade sentiment. Very, very important. Big breaking news brought to you by Aman Sharma, right up on top of 9. We move on, viewers, because the news cycle never stops, and there's always another bigger story waiting to be told. It's an incident, viewers, that should set off alarm bells. An IAF officer, Wing Commander Sheeladitya Basu, and his wife, squadron leader Madhumita, posted a video The video was gory, blood pouring down his face like water. Wing Commander Basu, barely able to speak, narrated a terrifying incident where he alleged that his car was waylaid by a bike-borne local in the heart of Bengaluru. That's the picture of a bandaged Wing Commander Basu, viewers. And on the extreme right is that blow-up between the two. Now, how did it happen? Apparently, the local was allegedly upset with the Wing Commander and directed a string of profanities at the Wing Commander's wife, who was driving the vehicle to drop her husband off to the airport. But when the irate local realized that the Wing Commander and his squadron leader wife didn't understand Kannada, he allegedly got triggered and assaulted the military man. This is what the Wing Commander has told us. Listen to him in his own words.
We stay in DRDO, CV Raman Nagar, phase 1. Today morning, my wife was driving me to the airport, and suddenly one bike came from behind, stopped in between, stopped our way. I will show you the video of my dashcam also. He came out, started abusing me in Kannada, and then seeing that my car has a DRDO sticker, he says that you DRDO people, and said many things in Kannada, and finally she abused my wife, and then I couldn't bear it. When I was coming outside, immediately he took his key in his hand and hit me on my head, taking my blood out. I stood there shouting that this is how you people defend whom we defend. Treat a person from the army, from Air Force or from Navy, from the defense forces. More people came surprisingly and started abusing us, that we are doing wrong things. That person, he took his stone out, started trying to hit my car. I trying to stop, he hit me on my head again. Here you can see the blood and see my condition. My wife was there, thankfully, to take me out, come in the car. We went to the police station. Presently no response. We will see it further. We are going to the hospital as per them. But this is what Karnataka has become. I believed in Kannada, but seeing the truth, the reality of main heartland Karnataka, I couldn't believe it. God help us. God gave me the power not to retaliate.
The Wing Commander Bose giving his views. The police have filed a case, but the IAF and DRDO have begun their own inquiry. As of now, the attacker has been nabbed and the matter is being presented as a road rage incident. There you can see in the middle of your screens is the fist which is enclosing. There you can see the keychain which was used to attack this IAF officer. For now, we have only the Air Force officer's version to rely upon, and if it is true that the attack was triggered by chauvinism, this would be a very sad day. It would reveal that we have so succumbed to basic instincts that we've forgotten that we are Indians first. We've forgotten the sacrifices that have been made by our ancestors to secure us a homeland where we can hold up our heads without fear. We've forgotten that we have one mother and one set of values. We've forgotten that the military man who lays down his life doesn't do it exclusively for a Kashmiri, a Punjabi, a Malayali, a Bengali, a Tamilian, Telugu, a Homis, Manipuri, Odia, or a Kannadiga. He does it, viewers, to protect Indians, without exception. We've forgotten that in the military there is only one God, that is duty. We've forgotten that the military uniform speaks only one language, that of valor. The military uniform salutes only one flag, the tricolor. The military uniform sacrifices for only one land, that is Bharat. As of now, the Bengaluru police has pinned the blame on road rage, saying that it wasn't the local who was the aggressor, but it was the Wing Commander who was the aggressor. Two versions, viewers. Obviously, there is pressure also. Let's not forget to play down the chauvinism angle, if there was one. I don't know. But there might be pressure. Everyone wants to gloss over things. So the truth might invariably lie somewhere in between. But first, listen in to the Bengaluru police.
No, preliminary investigation and analysis of the lot of CCTV footages shot by public and also the public safety, public CCTVs shows that it is a clear-cut case of road rage. Okay. Nothing to do with the religion or language, region or language. So it's a clear-cut case of.
So who has been arrested, sir? Who's this particular person? And what happened? What ensued? Did the car touch the vehicle first? The dashcam video is also, footage is also what you investigated.
He drove with high speed, for which the local or the eyewitnesses says that, which was questioned by the lady officer, for which he objected. So that's how the altercation started. So both of them could have ignored. So instead of the ignoring, they fell in argument. So he went to the.
Both of them could have been ignoring the provocations. But even if this turns out to be a case of road rage, not motivated by identity, it's still a massive wake-up call. It tells you that the traffic situation in Bengaluru is so stressful that the ordinary citizen is being driven to the point of rage. And worse, if even an IAF officer in a well-marked car is not safe from thuggery or from reprisal, then as Wing Commander Das says, God help us all, because the administration certainly isn't. This is an all-round indictment. If it isn't road rage, then we've got a larger problem set off by politics, which has become increasingly divisive, pitting Indian against Indian. And if it isn't about chauvinism, if it isn't about identity, then it's about civic issues. And we have to ask ourselves, what brings Indian citizens so close to the edge? It is, viewers, administrative apathy. This is what we get in the name of civic development in this country. Either horrid roads with potholes, or bad traffic management, or narrow roads which are never catering for the volume of traffic because of the bad city urban planning. But I want to open this up. Major Gaurav Arya is there with us. Anand Ranganathan is there with us. Surbi Hodigere is there with us. But we also have General Dillon tonight, and I want to begin with General Dillon first. General Dillon, I know that you are speaking from an airport setting in Kashmir, and I have to ask you, when you see these pictures of an officer, military officer being attacked, I'm not going into who provoked, who did it first, but I would presume that if you identify yourself and you say I'm a military man, there would have been a certain degree of restraint. You respect the uniform anywhere you are, of course. But clearly it didn't prove to be the case here, General. So I want to ask you, what are your first impressions?
Good evening, Rahul, and good evening to all your viewers. See, I am sitting at Srinagar Airport, so you have to bear with me for the audio and the video. Yes, this incident which happened today in Bengaluru, I've been to Bangalore so many times. I think it's a wonderful city, very nice people, very hospitable, very friendly. And I never faced such a thing in my life, even in my civil dress and other things. Now, a soldier, during his tenure of 20 to 35, 40 years, he serves in 10 to 15 different states of the country. Now, how do you expect him to learn the language of each state? He doesn't look at the terrorist or the enemy and say, I am fighting for state A, B, C or D. He fights for nation. He fights for India. He fights for every Indian. I think when they could see the DRDO sticker, and that I think was total hooliganism and atrocious, to say the least. I think this is a very wrong precedence. This is going to hold Bangalore, a city, in a very bad state, very bad taste. And I think someone has to do something at the earliest to end this nonsense.
Well, General,
it is very disturbing. Yeah. And this way, tomorrow the truck drivers carrying essentials like vegetables, medicines, petrol, diesel, they would not like to enter Karnataka. Yeah. Similarly, the airline pilots who are non-Karnataka people, they wouldn't like to land in Bangalore. Then how do you serve? How do you work? We are working in a country where there are different states, we have different religions, we have different communities, we have different castes, we have different languages, we have different regions. But overall, we are one Indian. I think this nonsense has to stop, and earlier the better.
And culture in the military, General Saab, is very different. In the military, there's only one identity. Tell us a little bit about this.
Absolutely. Like when I meet another officer, no one asks me which state you are from, which religion you are from, which language do you speak, which region you are from. My identity is Alpha Squadron 63rd Coast Rajputana Rifles. That's it. We don't look at each other. कौन सी कार ड्राइव करते हो, कौन सी स्टेट से आते हो, क्या रिलीजन है, क्या खाते हो, क्या नहीं पीते हो. We are a different breed, and I think this is the last bastion of India, where Indianness and India stands tall. Every soldier only knows that he is an Indian first. His religion is Indian. His blood group is Indian positive. And seeing such a thing, I think it's a shameful act, and it's atrocious.
So a man who served this country, General Saab, why is identity becoming such a sticking point in civil society these days? Who's responsible for this breakdown?
See, this is where we have to again get our act together. Indian Army, Indian Defence Forces, Air Force, Navy, and for that matter, even the paramilitary forces, they are the examples, shiny examples right in front of us, how to be an Indian, how to live together, how to, work together in harmony. Even the Northeast, where the tribal identities are so strong, there have been tribal clashes. But in the Indian Army, Assam Regiment or Assam Rifles, both the tribes stay happily. They never have a problem with each other when they are inside the unit. So it is an example which we can imbibe. The military ethos must be imbibed. All the good ethos must be taken on by the civil society to make our India great and our Indian society really worth it.
General Saab, just stay on. I want to open this up. Dr. Ranganathan, you watch these pictures. There are two versions tonight. The police, of course, stepping in very quickly, giving clean chit, saying that, well, the fault lies really with the IAF officer and his wife. They were the agents provocateurs. I don't want to get into this blame game, but there's something broken. There's something wrong here. Something that can't be contemplated.
No doubt, Rahul. Good evening to you and to my fellow panelists. Yes, you've actually touched the what I would say is the nub of the issue. Because of the fact of the matter is, as General Saab also has said, a soldier knows only one language, and that is the language of valor and sacrifice. There is no other language that needs to be taught to him or he needs to learn. These are axioms as far as I am concerned. And any attack on a soldier or a veteran in this country is unacceptable. And those who attack a soldier or a veteran, I think, although it might be I'm being bombastic, they should remember how their lives are being defended by the very people that they are attacking. So next time they think of attacking a soldier or a veteran, let them go to the border and defend us, and then they will see how tough the situation is. Having said that, there are two issues. I agree with you. It's too early to say that now whether the attackers, although I'm not taking their side at all, but the facts are facts. Whether they attacked, indulged in xenophobia or parochialism, that's one matter that is, of course, as serious as it can be. Number two, whether it was a road rage, as the police is alleging, well, I don't know. The truth will be out soon. But let me show you one facet out here. This is not just, something that has happened randomly. There is a pattern to this. This is in 2023, when an armed forces personnel was brutally attacked in Kerala by civilians, and on his back PFI was written. Now you can say that, well, nobody had an idea that he was an armed force officer. No, that's not true. The fact of the matter is that such attacks are happening with alarming regularity. I remember just a couple of months ago it was that General Saab brought to our notice in Punjab how the police treated the army officers so brutally, beat them up. And of course, the police officers were suspended as a result of General Saab's action. So I think the fact of the matter is we're living in a society where almost daily you see the news coming from down south, which is my state. peddling such rank xenophobia and parochialism, talking about language not being acceptable, talking about delimitation not being acceptable, talking about all sorts of supremacist things, talking about othering other people, talking about, the things that we thought we had left behind in the 1960s when, my community, Tamilians, were literally chased out of Mumbai, if you remember, what Shiv Sena did. It's hard to forget. Now, all those things being repeated is just a macabre scenario, and the sooner all this ends, the better.
I'm also half a Kannadiga. Let me be very honest. And I don't know, because usually I can tell you with my hand on my heart, very, very respectful, disciplined people. So Abbas, I have to bring you in. Mr. Abbas,
yes.
We're all state mates, but I have to ask you a question.
Yes, please.
For a moment, let's forget this was anything to do with identity politics. Let's take the view of the police completely at face value. Let's believe the police. Let's forget that they are under pressure to play down anything that could bring embarrassment to the government, the politics of the day. We are counting castes the whole day. We are counting religions the whole day. We are counting who should get what on the basis of which caste and which religion. Obviously, there's going to be a certain degree of xenophobia. But I'm not even going there, Mr. Abbas. I'm asking you, is the situation, the administrative situation, so pathetic now that when you drive on the streets of Bengaluru, you get triggered because the traffic brings with it stress of its own? And who's responsible for that, sir? Modi? Gadkari? CM? Administration? Who's responsible? Can you explain?
Firstly, Rahul Saab, I speak as a Kannadiga today, first an Indian, of course, but from the state of Karnataka. Let me tell you, I have had a word with enough number of people.
No, please. One second. I'm not here to get into. Listen, you're not Sherlock Holmes.
No, you need to listen
one
to
second.
me, sir.
No, you're not Sherlock Holmes, and I'm not Sherlock Holmes.
And allow me
you are not a judge. I'm not a judge. I'm not getting into who started this. You could have had a lot of conversations with a lot of people.
Me to present
one second.
Point,
no, please get to the. I'm asked you a very. I told you I don't want to get into this nonsense. I want to ask you. Clearly, there is a problem on the streets of Bengaluru that triggers people to the point where they are willing to exchange blows. Whoever did it first, I'm not getting into here. I'm asking you a specific question. Why is it that tempers are running so high on the streets? And this is not the first incident of road rage, by the way.
Firstly, respected sir, with huge respect to you, kindly allow me 1 minute time, because my state is being questioned here, which is absolutely wrong.
Our state. Now, our state, my state, yours, mine, yours. Viewers, this is all that we're going to do. Every country is moving on in the world. We are still thinking of yours and mine.
For once, be a fair anchor and allow
I'm
me
being
to
absolutely
complete
fair,
my
but can you get to the question that I asked you? And it's a specific question.
Sir, I'm sorry to say, but the half Kannadiga in you is sleeping and is biased and partisan. If you're a true Kannadiga, a true Indian, allow an Indian to speak 1 minute, please. The fact of the matter, you're trying to make this a state issue, state law and order issue, is absolutely false. You need to understand that the Bengaluru police was the first to get in touch with the respected army personnel. They got in touch via Instagram and asked him to file a complaint.
Am I blaming the police? No, I'm not. Am I blaming the army? No, I'm not. Am I blaming the IAF? No, I'm sorry, Mr. Abbas. Look, I don't have all the time in this world. I need straight answers. I brought you in because you're a citizen, and I would have expected you to say, yes, the traffic situation, 1 second, shut him down. The traffic situation is bad in Bengaluru. It is bad. It needs immediate redress. I'm sorry, Mr. Abbas. I can't. I'm asking you a question. Can you answer the question? Do you believe the traffic situation is so bad in Bengaluru today that citizens are losing their shirt? Enough is enough.
Don't be an unfair anchor. Please allow me the same time. Allow me the courtesy you allowed Ranganathan and the Dylan Saab here. Now listen to me clearly, sir. This is not a matter of language. This is a matter of road rage. This is not a matter of religion. This is a matter of road rage. What has happened is unfortunate, but you also need to know that the truth is out there. I have an account of the eyewitness. Please listen to this.
Okay, let's please shut him down. This gentleman is not understanding the question. He's taking it in a very conveniently different direction, viewers. If he says it's about road rage, what is causing the road rage? It is potholes on the roads, the pathetic condition of the roads, the bad civic planning that has resulted in logjam after logjam, the poor infrastructure. Surbi Hodigere, am I wrong? And this extends across time. I'm not making this about one government. When is Bengaluru, India's most cosmopolitan city by its own admission, its most connected city, its Silicon Valley, its world-class city, going to wake up and change things? Simple question. I'm sure you'll answer it.
Rahul, thank you for that question. And I think it's an important one that we have to discuss. Before I get to that, I just want to say that despite the many attempts of the Congress party to play extreme divisive politics in terms of separating North versus South, the very, othering that you were talking about, Karnataka, Kannadigas, and every one of us, every Indian is incredibly proud of our army, is incredibly, very, very, very always thankful for the service of our armed forces. Having said that, and Bengaluru has a significant proportion, Dilan Saab would know that significant proportion of people who are in serving the armed forces who have base here in Bengaluru. So we've always had a city that has always been very, very welcoming homely to such to armed forces. Having said that, we ask the right questions here, because either if it's a road rage incident or a language related incident, there is much to be questioned. If it's a road rage related incident, I want to also point to what the police said, that there was the woman, the wife, the squadron
officer.
leader, she was driving, officer, she was driving. There was an altercation because she said something. So, I also see this as a woman driving in Bengaluru. There's a lot of anger on the road. There's a lot of wrong way driving. Police do their best, but it is against the capacity, outside the capacity of the police. Where Bengaluru has come today, these are all real reminders today that we have no real leadership for the city. If you take one drive around the city throughout the entire day, we will understand this very clearly. There are other cities also in this country that are going through this urban stress, but Bengaluru has the unique problem of zero vision amongst its leadership. I place the blame at the footstep of the man who said he can solve Bengaluru's problems in 6 months, the Deputy Chief Minister and Bengaluru in charge, DK Shikhi.
Look, these are legacy issues. Let's be very honest. Major Arya, I want to bring you in. No, 1 second. Look, I don't want to make this only about politics, viewers. This is an important issue. This is about urban decay, and it is now pitting citizens against citizens, if you were to go by what the police is saying. Mr. Abbas, of course, didn't have it in him to come out and take a stand even on this issue, which is absolutely bipartisan. It has nothing to do with parties. If a city is in decay, you have to ask the people who are leading that city, why is it that we vote for you? Why is it that we are giving you money from our pockets as taxes? No, because, sir, you're sitting here to insult anchors, to insult people, panelists, etc. You're not wanting a constructive conversation. This is an important turning point. Major General. No, hang on, 1 second.
Allow me to speak.
1 second, sir. I've had enough of your nonsense. Shut him, please. I'm sorry, Mr. Abbas. I'm sorry you missed your chance. You ruined it by pointing fingers, and that's not acceptable. Let's rise above our petty politics and our partisanship. Think of the country for once, for God's sakes. This is a reflection of what the problem is. It's frustration. Major Arya, how do you see this, sir?
Thank you, Rahul. Karnataka has produced some of the finest generals that the Indian Army has seen. General Thimayya, General Kariyappa, all from the state of Karnataka. So it has a certain military legacy. And of course, who can forget the brave people of Coorg? The Kodivas. They've substantially contributed. I mean, I can go on and on. The problem is it's happening everywhere, like Anand mentioned. It's happened in Kerala, then it happened with Colonel Bath in Patiala. I think, you see, I don't know what to say here, Rahul, but General Dhillon is much senior to me. He's a very, very senior veteran and very highly respected. It wouldn't have happened in our times. It wouldn't have happened. This has started. This is a trend that is not more than 10, 15 years old. In my time, the army would have taken care of it. There is the Para Center in Bangalore. There is the CMP Center in Bangalore. There is the ASC Center in Bangalore. There are thousands upon thousands. How can you touch a military officer? It can't be done. During our time, we would have sorted it out the old army way. I'm not talking about violence here. I will never advocate violence. But yes, we would have gone en masse. We would have spoken to the cops. We would have sorted it out. And we have done it so many times in Mau. General KJS Dhillon sir is from the infantry. He's done so many courses in Mau. He would know the history. हमारे साथ कभी ऐसा नहीं हुआ. This is a recent phenomena. In the past, we've always sorted it out, and I think the army needs to go back to its roots. As far as this incident is concerned, let's wait for the facts of the case to come out. I've had very pleasant memories of Bangalore. I worked for Wipro, by the way.
Yeah.
So I've worked in Electronic City. I worked in Sarjapur. I have a lot of regard for Karnataka. I worked there actually. But there are bad apples everywhere. But this happening to army officers, not just in Karnataka, happened in Punjab. I mean, what can be more army than Punjab? Come to think of it, in Punjab, every house has a Fauji. If it can happen in Punjab, it can happen everywhere. The army needs to get back to its root and sort out these issues. And I think
well, in this
all
case,
the Faujis there know what I mean by
IAF
sort out.
officer, Air Force officer. So,
yes.
Anyhow, the military needs to. I get the point that
absolutely.
you're making. 1 second. General Saab, what is your message to the wing commander? He put out a desperate plea saying that he now fears for the safety of his wife and his children who have been left behind in the city. What would be your advice?
My message to wing commander is just, okay, this is a bad thing which has happened. But more importantly, my message to the people who did it is, you may be whatsoever, whosoever, you may be speaking whatever language, you may be fighting for whatever language, you may be, advocating whatever language. As a soldier, I'll still lay down my life for you because you are an Indian. And I treat you as an Indian, not any hooligan, not any state subject or a person who speaks only one language. I will lay down my life to protect your interest. That is the message from soldier to the hooligans who created this nonsense.
Well, salute you, sir. I mean, who else can add anything and better that sentiment? I don't think anyone can. I don't think anyone can. Viewers, there is a problem. Whether this is road rage or this is some sort of other incident, but if it's road rage, I think for God's sakes, our administrators should wake up to the urban decay. And it's not just Bengaluru, viewers. It happens in Delhi. It's happening. I mean, Delhi, the problem is, yes, Dr. Ranganathan, yes.
No, as I wanted to say, I mean, yesterday I was traveling from Delhi to Gurgaon, and honestly, I was driving on the left-hand side of the road, and I was in doubt whether this is the right side, because everyone was coming the other way.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is like, you're driving in India, you think you're in America all of a sudden. But, the other point I wanted to raise was that the fact of the matter is, yes, it happens to a defense personnel, it is unacceptable. But that doesn't mean that if it happens to people who are not from the armed forces, that's acceptable. The problem is, it is happening to armed forces, people so alarmingly that it's been normalized that it is now extending to the armed forces.
That's a very good point. It is normalizing, and it is a sign of a psychosis, viewers. Just go through any Delhi road. There are these yellow barriers after barriers, and they put them in weird ways on the road without any thinking. And you get backlogged for miles sometimes. I mean, what is going on? Are we being taken for such a ride, literally? I mean, think about it, viewers. Think about it. This is just a symptom of a larger problem. I want to move on because when we are talking about symptoms, viewers, there are plenty of symptoms coming to the surface in another sector, another organ of our state. The echoes of the criticism dished out to the Supreme Court for purportedly overreaching and allegedly stepping on the toes of the executive have begun to reach the ears of the top justices, indicating that the Supreme Court justices are aware of the sentiments expressed by the Vice President of India and a section of BJP MPs. Justice Gavai, who is to be next CJI of India, made oblique references to the predicament the judges find themselves in. Hearing a plea filed by Vishnu Shankar Jain arguing for extending the authority of the centre upon the state of Bengal, Justice Gavai said, and I quote, "You want us to issue a writ of mandamus to the President to impose this? As it is, we are facing allegations of encroaching into executive." Please. The Justice may not have said it in so many words, but he was clearly referring to a slew of unfavorable remarks passed by a host of establishment hawks. You could think that he was pouting a little bit, viewers, to use the term loosely or lightly. Clearly he's pouting a little bit. So why is he pouting? Because there are establishment hawks who have come out and said things. For instance, influential BJP MP Nishikant Dubey said, And I quote, the Supreme Court is crossing its limits. If one must go to the Supreme Court for everything, then Parliament and State Assembly should be shut. When the Ram Mandir, Krishna Janambhoomi or Gyanvapi issue arises, you, which is he's referring to the Supreme Court, say, show us the papers. But for mosques built after the Mughals came, you are saying, how will you show papers? The Supreme Court is responsible for inciting religious wars in this country, unquote. He was making a reference to the problems in Murshidabad. Listen in.
इस देश में धार्मिक युद्ध भड़काने के लिए केवल और केवल सुप्रीम कोर्ट जिम्मेवार है। सुप्रीम कोर्ट का एकमात्र उद्देश्य है, शो मी द फेस विल शो यू द लॉ। सुप्रीम कोर्ट अपनी सीमा से बाहर जा रहा है। सुप्रीम कोर्ट की सीमा यह है कि भारत का संविधान जिस कानून को बनाया, उस कानून की उसको व्याख्या करनी है, और यदि वो व्याख्या नहीं कर सकती है और सब कुछ के लिए सुप्रीम कोर्ट जाना है, तो इस संसद का कोई मतलब नहीं है, विधानसभा का कोई मतलब नहीं है, उसको बंद कर देना। इस देश में जितने गृह युद्ध हो रहे हैं उसके जिम्मेवार केवल यहाँ के चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ इंडिया संजीव खन्ना साहब हैं।
Viewers, this is blunt. This is blunt. It's in the extreme. Some would say it is without polish. But let me tell you, if you remove the tone and you get to the substance, no different from what a lot of other people have been saying in the aftermath of, let's say, the Ayodhya judgment. I remember an editorial that appeared in the Indian Express written by a great public intellectual. In fact, on the left side of the fence, he's regarded as the apex. And he talked about judicial barbarism. Judicial barbarism, equating all the judiciary to barbarians. That got a lot of play, and people said, wow, how bold you are, Mr. So-and-so, what a great guy. But Dubey has not been so lucky. Though the BJP has distanced itself from Dubey's remarks, however, it has been much more circumspect about the Vice President's statement. The Vice President, Jagdeep Dhankar, upset with a Supreme Court landmark judgment that effectively set a deadline for the President and governors to clear bills passed by the legislature for the second time, has also been taking potshots at the judiciary. The Vice President said, so we have judges who will legislate, who will perform executive functions, who will act as a super parliament and absolutely have no accountability because law of the land does not apply to them, unquote. These remarks are but two. And they've drawn a furious response from the opposition that has accused the executive of running a slander campaign to intimidate the judiciary and make a case to fetter independence. Public memory is short, so viewers, you must have forgotten how, of course, the opposition and its ecosystem have been attacking the courts after pretty much every judgment that has gone against them. But that doesn't matter. In this sort of tutu meme or constant recriminatory politics, one side forgets that it has actually crossed the Lakshman Rekha long before the other. But while the debate is raging, I told you, Dubey has not been lucky. He now faces a contempt case. Ironically, the judiciary will be called upon to sit in judgment. The question is, will the courts take Dubey apart? Or will they allow these remarks to stand in a spirit of tolerance they themselves have preached? Let's open this up. Let's ask some fundamental questions tonight. Deshratan Nigam, I want to start with you. Nikhil Jain, the two lawyers on the panel. Deshratan Nigam, first of all, what do you make of this case that is being filed against Mr. Dubey and the fact that the judiciary at some level might be advocating on it, or at least standing in judgment of it? And do you think that what he said is something that should have been said in the first place?
Well, Rahul, in fact, there are two aspects of what Mr. Dubey said. One is the content and one is the manner in which it was said. The manner, we may not agree as to what he said and the way he said it. But so far as contents are concerned, he was almost echoing what Indira Gandhi said long time back. Exactly word verbatim. Now, if you look at the case, that case which has become the so-called landmark case, involved a constitutional question. Even the governor's, powers were constitutional powers. And any issue regarding constitutional powers must be dealt with by 5 judges, minimum 5 judges bench. And a judge who is ignorant of such a situation, whether deliberately or otherwise, needs to be taken to task. I am very clear about it because a 2 judges bench almost modified the constitution, amended the constitution, which is a part of legislative domain. And then when a matter like President's veto power was not before the Supreme Court, they made a remark and a statement in that judgment, which clearly means they transgress that particular line, the red line that we talk about, and therefore that particular bench should not have done so. The constitution question which means provisions of a constitution, was brought into the domain of a dispute which was not even there before that particular bench. So it is obiter dicta. Obiter dicta means, for your viewers, it has no force of law. It should be ignored by the central government. Central government should not even look into it, because that's a passing reference, a dispute, an issue which was not even there before the court.
Right.
Therefore, this is very important that we must. And secondly, a bench for an ordinary person, we have a principle: the ignorance of law is no excuse, and more so for judges. If judges ignore the law, the constitutional tenets which have been established by the Supreme Court, what should we say? And my advice to the government of India is, since President is the appointing authority, he must withdraw the work from that particular bench and investigate this matter independently, because it's very important whether he has done it deliberately, the bench has done it deliberately, or it's a bona fide mistake. These are very important questions that can be gone into, and it should not be taken seriously. And let me point out one thing, that people somehow say Supreme Court is supreme. Our preamble, which is the key to the Constitution, begins with "We the people of India." This phrase signifies that the Constitution derives its authority from the people of India, on which emphasizing their sovereignty, the people's sovereignty, from which parliamentary democracy in India has arisen. So parliamentary democracy is based on the will of the people. So legislative supremacy will always lie with the parliament, and Supreme Court cannot, through its judgment, indirectly start amending the Constitution, thereby abrogating the legislative powers of the parliament to itself.
Okay, well, that's a longer debate, and of course we can get into that another time. But prima facie, you are saying that the courts are overreacting, that the judiciary is perhaps crossing its brief. Nikhil Jain, going into areas where the reference wasn't even to it, to go into that particular area, taking upon itself to go beyond the brief that was brought before it, Mr. Jain.
Rahul, so first of all, it's not, the case that the Supreme Court decided, wherein they limited the powers of the president and the governor to just, endlessly sit on bills. And let's first remember the context of how the case was filed. It was filed by the Tamil Nadu government because the governor in Tamil Nadu had been sitting on bills for over 4 years. The elected legislative assembly of the people, the mandate of the people, was being withheld by an unelected individual. That is what the Supreme Court looked into. And the route that the governor employed in order to do so was that he sent the bill to the president, and the president conveniently sat on that for that longer period. Now, Mr. Nigam has been making this point quite often, that this is just obiter dicta, and some other people also, not just Mr. Nigam, that this is just obiter dicta because that was not an issue for consideration before the court. If you would actually look at the judgment, I think it's on page 61 of the judgment. There are 6 issues before consideration of the court, and the 6th issue is upon the rights and powers of the president under Article 200. It was an issue before the court. It was judicially determined by the court, and a decision has been passed on it. That is pretty much what is the definition of ratio decidendi. It is binding precedent, and it is well within the power of the court to go into this. Also, on the Nishikant Dubey statement, I'd like to just make one remark, that a lot of people have been saying that the tone and tenor is wrong, but the contents are right. Now, let's forget the kind of attack that the BJP is doing on the judiciary right now. Nishikant Dubey, an elected MP, says that the Chief Justice of India, his words, is responsible for civil war, Grihi Yudh, in the country. Forget the tone. Please, somebody explain to me, how is the content right? How is the Chief Justice of India responsible
by this extension,
for civil war, number one? And what
I remember in the Nupur Sharma case, which was being heard, no one was pronounced guilty. Nupur Sharma case, didn't the Supreme Court say she has a loose tongue? Now, I don't know if this was misogyny. Look at the adjectives that were used.
Absolutely
as if women all have loose tongues. You see,
no.
She
Rahul,
has hang on, Nikhil Jain, 1 second. She has a loose tongue. She is responsible for all the riots that are breaking out across the length and breadth of the country. Did she not? They did not say this?
At that point of time, first of all, there was some incidents of communal clashes that were going on.
Should they have? Well, because of the Vikas, some people will say Murshidabad burned, Hindus were killed. There was religious problems.
But did the Supreme Court call it civil war?
I don't know.
Nishikant Dubey, the BJP MP,
they
is calling
said
it
you're
civil
the reason
war.
for the strife in society. It's the same thing. because we know who was clashing. So
No,
I'm
even
sorry,
then,
we can't have different yardsticks. You know, no
for a
one
moment,
here
let's-
is
no, no.
no one here
For
is
a
on a
moment,
higher
let's-
pedestal. Hang on. Let's be honest
For a
tonight.
moment, let me
And I
agree
also
with
want to
you.
ask you.
For a
I
moment,
also
let
want
me
to
agree
ask
with
you,
you.
Mr. Jain. One
What has
second.
Justice
No, one
Khanna
second,
done?
Mr. Jain. Please take my question. I want to ask you a follow-up question. You said that time limitation and this, that, the other. Presidents sit on these files. Judges, governors sit. Laws are not being passed, and obviously the will of the people is not being reflected. How many cases are pending in the courts, Mr. Jain?
Quite a lot of cases are pending in the court.
And for
because
how
we
many
have an
years?
understaffed judiciary.
For how many years?
For many, many years, because we have an understaffed judiciary.
We have an
State
understaffed
governments
judiciary.
Are not,
तारीख
yeah,
पे
and the
तारीख
state governments
वाला
are not
judiciary
releasing
नहीं
the
है,
funds.
understaffed judiciary है.
Rahul,
Stays are given
Rahul,
at the drop of a hat. I have been a victim, sir. My family has been a victim. I know what goes on. This is not personal. I'm telling you from experience. 17 years.
Rahul,
it took a ICS officer, a person who served this country, honestly living on a pension till he was 84 to get his home back. From that too, a convicted smuggler. 17 years.
Rahul,
he had not two pennies to rub by the end of it. Anyhow, look, Mr. Jain, I agree with you. I agree with you. Tone was absolutely rotten.
I am saying the content was also illogical.
Also
How is Justice Khanna responsible for any civil war?
Okay, fine. Let's open it up. Maybe some other people have some other views. Dr. Ranganathan getting into this, and after that, Mr. Gupta. Yes.
Rahul, I beg to differ. Not just the tone, the content was absolutely pat on. There was nothing wrong in what BJP leader Dr. Nishikant Dubey said, and it would be a tragedy if his party were to throw him under the bus underneath from where Nupur has just begun to crawl out from. Let me give you 9 clear-cut instances where the Supreme Court, in overlooking as well as overseeing blatant discrimination against the Hindus, not only seeded resentment, it stoked, as Dr. Nishikant Dubey said, possibility of religious wars in this country. 1, Kashmiri Hindus. Supreme Court, as you know, refused to reopen the cases of criminality in 1990 against Kashmiri Hindus, saying, quote, too much time had elapsed. This after the same Supreme Court constituted an SIT to look into the cases of criminality in 1984 against the Sikhs that happened 6 years before the Kashmiri Hindu genocide. If this is not seeding resentment among Hindus and stoking religious wars, what is? Number 2, Waqf Act. For 30 years, the Supreme Court never found illegal an act that gave Muslims the power to claim any property as their own. That allowed them to annex any land.
That is not correct.
He didn't interrupt you, sir. Let him finish. You can come back. Raise your hand, please. Let's
very unbecoming.
Let's keep it civil.
I did not expect this from you. I prepare for my debates and I challenge you to prove me wrong if you have the time and the temerity. So as I was saying, number 2, Waqf Act. Rahul, for 30 years, the Supreme Court never found illegal an act that gave Muslims the power to claim any property as their own, that allowed them to annex any land housing a functional operational mosque, allowing Muslims to usurp 20 lakh acres in the last 10 years. If this is not seeding resentment among Hindus and stoking religious wars, what is? 3, state control of temples. How can the state be secular and at the same time control only Hindu places of worship? Why doesn't the Supreme Court, in the interest of equality it so cherishes, ask the state to control mosques as it does temples? If this is not seeding resentment among the Hindus and stoking religious wars, what is? 4, RTE. The Supreme Court has ratified the conjunction of the Right to Education Act with 93rd Amendment, forcing only Hindu-run schools to give 25% reservation to the EWS children. Muslim-run or Christian-run schools are not under any such obligation. If this is not seeding resentment among Hindus and stoking religious wars, what is? 5, free speech. Why did Supreme Court so ruthlessly come down on Nupur for merely quoting Islamic scriptures? Why Udinidhi Stalin is roaming free? You rush in to call any speech against Islam as hate speech, but call hate speech against Hinduism as any speech? If this is not seeding resentment among Hindus and stoking religious wars, what is? 6, Hindu religious practices. Animal sacrifice is banned for Hindus, but halal is allowed for Muslims, even though both are religious rituals. If this is not seeding resentment, what is? 7, Places of Worship Act.
The Supreme Court has willfully ratified the Place of Worship Act that obligates maintaining all religious places as they were on August 15, 1947. Thousands of historical injustices can now never be addressed, even though a legal recourse to correct a historical injustice cannot be denied in a democracy. If this is not seeding resentment, what is? 8. Sabrimala judgment. There are many Hindu temples where men are barred entry. So was it discrimination or perceived discrimination? Meanwhile, Catholic women cannot become priests. Muslim women cannot enter a mosque sanctum sanctorum, can marry underage. Supreme Court removes discrimination only from Hinduism, but not from Islam or Christianity. Is this not seeding resentment and stoking religious wars? And finally, 9. CAA protests. The Shaheen Bagh anti-CAA protests that resulted in the terrible 2020 riots were about the blockade, the illegality of it. But the Supreme Court, despite recognizing illegality, went for mediation to remove the blockade. Would the Supreme Court ask for mediation for everything that it says illegal? Is this not seeding resentment?
Substance is not right, Mr. Gupta. Substance is not right.
Rahul, to extend your argument further, there are more than 5 crore cases pending with the district courts, high courts, and the Supreme Court of India. 12% of those cases have been pending for more than 10 years. Now, Nikhil raised this important point that the Tamil Nadu governor had been sitting on bills for more than 4 years, so it was okay for the judiciary to interfere. Nikhil, it was 4 years ago that the same judiciary stayed the farm laws, the important farm laws which would have been instrumental for the farmers of this country. What has happened? Where is the accountability? The farmers of Punjab are still protesting in some capacity. They are protesting against every government. Punjab is not prosperous. The farmers, the repeal of the farm laws have not helped the farmers. Hold on. Now let's come to the selective convenience. Rahul, I'll talk with examples. Today, the Supreme Court came down hard on a comedian for a joke he cracked. It was a vulgar joke nevertheless. But the high courts gave a clean chit to another comedian who cracked the joke against a former chief minister, now a deputy chief minister. Where is the common parameter a common citizen will ask? Another example, in the Waqf hearing last week, and we discussed this, the court was very interested in a one-sided transaction that how will a mosque, 300 years old, show its paperwork. But why wasn't the court ever interested in the second part of the transaction, that when the same Waqf boards were going around acquiring properties without any paperwork, claiming properties as their own, as old as 1500 years old, then the court wasn't worried about the paperwork. Now look, this is not about the BJP versus the Supreme Court or Nishikant Dubey versus the CJI. It's about the common people of India who have to wait for 17 years, like you did, your family did, and asking some simple questions of the judiciary, that where is the accountability? You tell a Kashmiri Pandit who suffered 35 years ago that we do not have time for you. But you're telling the advocate representing the Waqf side, oh, that we are worried about the mosques that were constructed 300 years ago. This is a selective convenience.
Okay, selective convenience. Okay, Mr. Abbas.
Firstly, Nishikant Dubey, it's very interesting how 3 of our respective panelists on the debate today are able to so beautifully justify Mr. Nishikant Dubey. Kindly tell me, respected sirs, how is it that Mr. Dubey says Supreme Court inciting religious wars in country, and you sit here and you're able to very nicely justify the same? Not just that, and he pins the blame on who? Chief Justice of India, Sanjiv Khanna ji. Also, Supreme Court pushing nation towards anarchy. I'd really like to know how. एक कश्मीरी कहावत है राहुल साहब जिसमें कहे हैं कि खंजर पे कोई छींटना, दामन में कोई दाग, तुम कत्ल करे हो या करामात करे हो. I'm awestruck today, respected sirs. People like you can even whitewash Nathuram Godse, saying that ठीक है जो किया गलत था but सही किया. That is a reality today. The fact my dear friend Anand Ranganathan mentioned about the Waqf law, respected sir, it is not that Waqf can claim any land. I kindly invite you to please attend any of the state boards, attend the Waqf board tribunal. You say these are kangaroo courts. Are you even aware how many cases the respective Waqf boards of many of the states has lost? Not just that, sir, even the judges, like the National Green Tribunal, like the securities. No, I did not interrupt you, Anand. Not fair.
Just let him finish.
30 seconds.
Yeah,
Thank
please.
you. 30 seconds. like you have the NGT, the National Green Tribunal,
Right.
like you have the SAT, the Securities Appellate Tribunal in the share market, there is a WAF tribunal.
Okay.
Even the Supreme
so
Court
you are
judges
saying
are
that there
appointed
is-
by the state.
Okay, so
Just
you're
10
saying
seconds,
that there
Rahul
is
sir.
a- okay,
10
fair
seconds.
enough. Okay, one
10
second.
seconds, yeah.
Yeah.
They are appointed. There are those who sit on the WAF
Okay, fair enough.
tribunal
I understand.
are
There is a
state
due
ordered
process. You can go
judges
up in
there.
appeal, this, that, the other. Okay, I
Sir,
understand
it's
that. But
not
I
like
want to,
I
I want
come to your
viewers,
house today
I
and
have
then
in
your
my
house is
hand,
buying
excuse me,
WAF
gentlemen,
board.
gentlemen, please. I have in my hand a headline from the Indian National Congress's Sandesh newspaper. Not the National Herald, the Sandesh. The Sandesh says, and it quotes an article, SC was never perfect. Supreme Court was never perfect. But the signs are that it is slipping into judicial barbarism. Judicial barbarism. Dr. Ranganathan, what does this tell you? There it is. It's right here.
Yes,
SC was
but,
never perfect, but the signs are that it is slipping into judicial barbarism. Let's take this. Let's quickly take this screenshot. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. No, yes, absolutely. No, look, two things here. Number one, this debate is not about the fact that others abuse the Supreme Court and Nishikant Dubey is also abusing. So the point I'm trying to make is that while the others actually abused the Supreme Court without any logic or rationale, Nishikant Dubey hasn't done so. And I have provided 9 reasons why he's absolutely pat on. 2 of the reasons my good friend Abbas disagreed. Let me tell you, emphasize it again. The 9th reason that I gave, Supreme Court itself considered blocking by Shaheen Bagh a main road of Delhi, inconveniencing lakhs of commuters as illegal. And yet, it allowed it to go on for 6 months. So it was promoting anarchy. And secondly, when you say that you dispute my earlier original work ad saying they claim everything, of course they do. Your reason is that they have a tribunal. Well, it goes to the tribunal to that then decide whether their claim is right or wrong.
Okay, they sit in judgment of their own case. I leave it at this, viewers. We've run out of time. Absolutely zero time on the show. We leave it at this. Palki Sharma coming up with Advantage. Thank you very much.
Presented by
From the beginning, Pope Francis had the common touch.
Buonasera.
A simple good evening from the newly elected Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio from Argentina, the first pope ever from the Americas. Equally at home with the poor and the powerful. On the lawn of the White House, he made a plea for immigrants.
As the son of an immigrant family, I'm happy to be a guest in this country, which was largely built by such families.
The Pope focused much of his attention to those on the peripheries, as he called it, the outsiders excluded from society.
The hungry, the thirsty, the stranger, the naked, the sick, those in prison.
He was not so popular at times inside the Vatican. Backlash from conservatives upset about his liberal approach to church teaching, promised reforms of financial transparency never fully materializing, and the scandal of sex abuse continuing to be the Catholic Church's biggest struggle.
He met with victims. He expressed heartfelt sorrow. He expressed resolve to get this right. But, you know, most critics, many victims, would say that that wasn't matched with a policy follow-through.
When the coronavirus pandemic hit in 2020, this image of the Pope blessing the world from an empty St. Peter's Square became a symbol for that desolate time. Francis urged nations to share their vaccines with poorer countries and vaccinated hundreds of homeless and underprivileged at the Vatican. From the beginning of the war in Ukraine in 2022, Francis was an outspoken advocate for peace. Francis avoided outright condemnation of Vladimir Putin, but publicly appealed to the Russian president, begging him to stop for the love of his people, the Pope said. He made similar appeals for peace during the conflict in the Middle East, saying that the Israel-Hamas war had descended into terrorism. He insisted that war is always a defeat and said self-defense that is not proportional is immoral. Francis's most important message was one of fraternity, that we are all brothers and sisters despite our differences. I'm Karen Kefa reporting. From the beginning, Pope Francis had the common touch.
Buonasera.
A simple good evening from the newly elected Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio from Argentina, the first pope ever from the Americas. Equally at home with the poor and the powerful. On the lawn of the White House, he made a plea for immigrants.
As the son of an immigrant family, I'm happy to be a guest in this country, which was largely built by such families.
The Pope focused much of his attention to those on the peripheries, as he called it, the outsiders excluded from society.
The hungry, the thirsty, the stranger, the naked, the sick, those in prison.
He was not so popular at times inside the Vatican. Backlash from conservatives upset about his liberal approach to church teaching, promised reforms of financial transparency never fully materializing, and the scandal of sex abuse continuing to be the Catholic Church's biggest struggle.
He met with victims. He expressed heartfelt sorrow. He expressed resolve to get this right. But, most critics, many victims, would say that that wasn't matched with a policy follow-through.
When the coronavirus pandemic hit in 2020, this image of the Pope blessing the world from an empty St. Peter's Square became a symbol for that desolate time. Francis urged nations to share their vaccines with poorer countries and vaccinated hundreds of homeless and underprivileged at the Vatican. From the beginning of the war in Ukraine in 2022, Francis was an outspoken advocate for peace. Francis avoided outright condemnation of Vladimir Putin, but publicly appealed to the Russian president, begging him to stop for the love of his people, the Pope said. He made similar appeals for peace during the conflict in the Middle East, saying that the Israel-Hamas war had descended into terrorism. He insisted that war is always a defeat and said self-defense that is not proportional is immoral. Francis's most important message was one of fraternity, that we are all brothers and sisters despite our differences. I'm Karen Kefa reporting. From the beginning.
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. The US Vice President is in India with his family. It's a packed trip at a very important time as Donald Trump wages his trade